Empty words. Those who don't keep their word are often known as betrayers or, in other words, liars. The wounds they inflict are hard to heal, and you never forget them. Everything was going fine until December 1st, when all the love, care, and trust from my beloved ones slowly began to wither away. It was all because of my selfishness. I had a childhood friend. We had been friends ever since I saved her from a horrible life where there was nothing but hatred directed at her because she was an adopted child. After that day, we made a promise: no matter what hardship we faced, we would face it together and never leave each other alone in the snow. But for some reason, after saving her, I developed a sense of pride. It made me think I was special and that she should have been grateful that I was still standing by her side, even though she was hated by others. Days passed, and I started ignoring her existence whenever she was with me because I didn't want to be disliked or hated because of her. She was fulfilling her role as a friend, but I didn't feel the need to reciprocate. After all, I had saved her, and she should have been grateful for that instead of expecting more. One day, my parents became curious about what I had been up to and asked me. I told them about my childhood friend, May, and how I had saved her from that horrible nightmare. They asked me to bring her home because they were curious to meet her. So, I brought her home the very next day. My parents asked her where she lived, and May replied, "I live in an orphanage because I don't have a family. I'm 16 years old." They became worried and offered to let her live with us. I didn't like the idea, but I allowed it because it seemed beneficial to me. I thought it would show my parents what a good friend I was, and I expected to receive more love and care in return. But the opposite happened. May received all the sympathy from my parents, even though I was the reason for her well-being. I became angry and started ruining everything with my own hands by being two-faced, acting kind in front of others, and harboring jealousy behind closed doors. As their beloved daughter, I didn't want anyone to share the love, care, and attention that belonged to me. I began making May look despicable in front of others so no one would show sympathy toward her. I acted innocent while making her feel like a burden, someone unworthy of love. I blamed her and intentionally got myself scolded while pretending to defend her. Every time I hurt her feelings, I felt a pang of guilt, but I ignored it because I didn't want to be distracted from my goal. I kept trying to drive her out of the house. I began discouraging her whenever we were alone. I told her, "May, you are a hated girl. What if I end up going through the same pain you went through?" "Why would that happen?" she asked. I replied, "Listen carefully, May. Sometimes, when you try to protect someone, you have to sacrifice a lot, and I'm afraid I won't be able to do that. I'm sorry." She smiled and asked if I wanted her to leave. At that moment, I didn't know if it was her smile or my guilt, but a tear rolled down my cheek. I began crying and said, "I don't want to hurt you, so please leave before I do something insane." But she simply said, "We are friends. We promised never to leave each other alone in pain." In my anger, I accidentally blurted out the truth and ruined everything. "Friends? You have never been my friend. I used you until I didn't need you anymore. You're just a tool. You're hated, so how could you even think of receiving love?" I went home, but something felt off. It was as if all the happiness in my life had disappeared in an instant. Even though she had left, just as I wanted, I felt like I had stolen my own happiness and gotten nothing in return. My parents noticed something was wrong and were worried about me, but I felt I didn't deserve their concern. I ran upstairs to my room, closed my eyes, and fell asleep, hoping it was all a bad dream. But it wasn't. Everything was over. I didn't know what to do anymore. I felt deep regret. I had broken someone's heart. I confessed everything to my parents, and they were disappointed in me. I tried to find her. I asked around the city, but no one knew anything. I went to the orphanage, but she wasn't there. The owner told me that May had left 2 days ago because her biological parents had come looking for her. I went to the house where she was staying and saw her standing on the balcony. I walked up to her and was met with empty eyes. Her gaze was hollow, and it broke me inside. I called her name and said, "I'm sorry, May. Please forgive me and come back." But she didn't respond. I said, "I know I was selfish, but I want to atone for what I did. Please, give me one last chance, May." She replied, "This world is strange, and the people in it are cruel. What game are you playing with me this time?" I was speechless. Her parents told me to leave immediately, so I left in sorrow. I went back the next day and saw her again. She looked just as lifeless as before. It hurt to see her that way. I grabbed her hands, apologized, and begged her to return home with me. This time, she spoke. She told me a painful story. "Maybe you want to atone for everything, but the wounds caused by words do not heal. They are hard to forget. When I was at the orphanage, I got seriously ill. A doctor discovered I had heart disease caused by depression. He said I only had 1 month left to live. And now, there's just 1 day left. When this month ends, I won't have to suffer anymore. My last wish was to spend my time with you happily, but unfortunately, we ended up like this. I will forgive you, because I have always thought of you as my friend." Her words left me in shock. Tears filled my eyes. But I was glad she smiled one last time. I was able to ease her pain before she passed away. Although I lost my friend and was left with sorrow, I learned a lesson. No matter what happens, always keep your word, have a big heart, and be honest. If you lose someone's trust, keep being honest. It may take time, but it's worth it. Trust is easy to break, but hard to rebuild.